Oh, so I guess it's a location. I thought it was the name of the train. Okay. God, it's like a junior high band practicing after school. The fuck?
This is the
Anyways, there's your tunnel. There's your tunnel ritual for context. Now you have it.
It's the financial elite, people that are loan ritual developing countries, putting Switzerland. There's a tunnel full.
Also, the Winter Olympics, the mockery of the Last Supper. I mean,
Right.
What is this? What is this? Is this?
Well, it's like, did you ever see the ceremony for the opening of the tunnel in Switzerland? It was a full-blown ritual to Baphomet. So I think that's just part of the.
What tunnel in Switzerland?
There's a tunnel that they cut. I think it was like a 23-mile long tunnel that they cut. And when they did the opening ceremonies for it, it was supposed to cut down on this travel significantly for people and a lot more towards getting people to actually believe it. Once it becomes normalized and they've seen it enough, they're like, oh, okay, maybe I do believe that. Whereas if the first time you see something like that, ritual to Baphomet, you're just like, that's just sick. That's just weird. Whereas if they just keep doing it, eventually it becomes normalized, and then people get used to it.
Do you think pedophilia will become normalized? Massive display of that happening right now.
Yeah, there is. I think what's happening, I don't think it's going to be normalized in the sense that your average guy on the street's going to be doing it, because it's against the natural law, right? We have natural inclinations, and God inclines us towards certain things, and if a guy has just natural virtue, he's going to find that stuff revulsive, right? So I think a vast percentage or majority of the people in their culture aren't going to ever do
What I worry
that
about
type of thing.
is the agenda being pushed on social media. Like you see like these e-girls coming out, and a lot of them look like they're teenagers even though they're adults. But the idea is to bait people who are teens or people who are into pedophilia or whatever. And I think that people growing up, because that's getting popular, are going to think that that's what they like because of the hive mind wanting to fit in mentality with what they perceive as public approval of girls who look like they're teens and tweens. But really what I think is happening is not so much that like so many guys are fapping to this. I think the algorithms are pushing it because, they're trying to normalize pedophilia. Like, I think it's a lot of botted likes. I think it's a lot of specifically curated agenda pushing. I don't think that many people are like, damn, she looks like she's 12. Sexy. I think it's a lot of perception, hoping that young people grow up thinking that this is what is hot because it has so much clout. That's how I feel, at least, with the agenda, at least partially.
But I can see it getting to the point where, especially if they start the psychological approach, which is what they're trying to do now, they're trying to remove pedophilia from the DSM, so that they just, because once it's
kind of like with
DSM,
the rap music and the YouTube views and stuff. I don't think that many people are like, let me listen to this daily as my jam. I think the algorithm is pushing it because it promotes bad things like drugs. It gets kids like wrapped up into like the gang mentality and the culture, and then they're more susceptible to end up in jail one day if they hang out with a bunch of hoodlums. That's getting more souls for the system.
you can decriminalize it, and then you can go from there, which is actually what they did with homosexuality. And so they want to do that. And so eventually I could see it getting to the point where people just think, yeah, that's normal. That's what Joe does, or whatever the case is, rather than, I like this, but he likes that. I can see it becoming normalized in that fashion if they keep
Rewind a bit to the
it.
video.
See it become Joe does. So SM, then you can getting to the point, Senator, it's against I don't think it's going to be normalized in the sense that your average guy on the street is going to be doing it, because it's against the natural law, right? We have natural inclinations, and God inclines us towards certain things. And if a guy has just natural virtue, he's going to find that stuff repulsive, right? So I think a vast percentage or majority of the people in our culture aren't going to ever do that type of thing. But I can see it getting to the point where, especially if they start the psychological approach, which is what they're trying to do now, they're trying to remove pedophilia from the DSM, so that they because once it's removed from the DSM, then you can decriminalize it,
What
and then
is
you can go from there, which is actually.
What is the DSM? Oh, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
What they did with homosexualty. And so they want to.
How do you know if
need
you
to
have a
know,
demon in you? You said you had a demon. All you did was command it to go in Jesus' name. How do you know if you have one? I've never felt like I have a demon. Do you hear their voice in your head or something? Interesting. I don't know. I've never experienced that. I never had an angsty period even as a hormonal teenager, so I don't know. Constant negative thoughts? Yeah, I can't say I've ever had that. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I'm just trying to conceptualize it. Person manifesting through major change for reasons, usually demonic. I don't know. You got through it binging on conspiracies, paranormal, haunting videos at work, weeks of sleep paralysis every day. Huh. I've watched lots of conspiracies, and I've never felt like I had a demon. At one point, I felt like I had a spiritual awakening, a download, and I realized what was going on in the world, and my mind was racing with a lot of prophetic things that happened to come true. But then after, I never felt like I had a demon. I don't know. I have had a demonic attack in my life. I mean, sure. I feel like anybody who doesn't like me is a demonic attack. I feel like I'm a pretty perfect person, Amen. I'm kidding. But
How many possessed?
no, I mean, shit's happened, but it never I don't know. Everything always works out. I'm not worried about it.
Because you need to make sure that when the person's liberated, they're fully cleaned out.
So there might be multiple demons.
Yes, they have. Yeah.
What's the most you've seen?
Well, like I said, this one had Legion. And I believe it was Legion. But outside that context, the one that I've seen the most is 27.
27 demons in one human?
Yeah. And it was a pretty sad case. This guy was a hurting unit, man, from all that. So most of them, though, it's somewhere between 1 to 8, maybe, are the most, that you tend to see as a general rule. I actually did see a case where I did one case where I got rid of one demon of fear. The woman went out and did something really stupid, and then when she came back, it was literally like scripture: 1 leaves and 7 come back, and that was literally, she had 7. So, so the number of possessors, the names. Because once you know the name, there's 2 aspects to the name. One, it gives you an identity. So, for example,
What's
when I
in a
had Loki
name?
in a case, once the demon revealed what his name was, then I was able to actually go and research historically Loki as a Norse god. Because it says right in Scripture, all the gods of Gentiles are demons. And so you can actually just go and look at the worship that they used to give to Loki in the past, and to the Norse god of Loki. And what you'll find out in there is it was almost a complete description of his personality. He's a god of mischief, and so he was just such a handle to get a hold of. But once you
When someone goes for you for little no reason to be demonic, oh, that explains Casey Mumutron. False golden cow type shit, you know?
know, for example, someone can juggle where they're keeping several things in the air at once. Demons can act on, like, I'm gonna act on these 3 people that I'm possessing because I'm, my access to them is the same, and so they can act on 3 people at the same time. But normally they don't do that.
Here's the most interesting video I have seen in a long time. I don't know about y'all. It's quite entertaining for me.
And it sounds like all of these demons were false gods at some point. You said a Norse god, Egyptian gods, Baal, Moloch,
Yeah. Not
Baphomet.
Yeah, so all the gods of the Gentiles are demons, which is true. I mean, the only ones I haven't come across are ones like for the Romans. Like, I haven't come across.
But it's BS. Okay, Santa is communist, Kappa. Thank you for your very studious insight. I'll make sure to take note.
Mars or Jupiter or something like that. But the Egyptian gods come across, several of those. The Norse ones are they're rising up because of they're being introduced or being used in video games and things of that sort that the young men are doing. So you're starting to see more of those. But not all the demons made themselves out to be a god to someone else. So Satan never really did, even though he wants people to worship him. He doesn't have a specific religion. He wants his own.
And they all fall under him.
They do, yeah.
What about Greek gods?
Yeah, it's the same. Some I've seen exorcists see, and some we haven't. So, I suspect at some point some exorcist has come across, Venus or whatever, but we just don't hear about it too often.
And so when we get into, looking back through
But the
time,
thing though about Greek gods, Roman gods, Norse gods, a lot of them are the same entities with different names. So I don't know.
when we're talking about Norse gods, Baal, Moloch, Greek god, any gods that, throughout history, does that mean that those gods were introduced by a demon?
Very often. So what will happen is, historically, either the demon will possess somebody in a particular culture, and then from there, the person kind of becomes like this oracle from which the rituals and the worship is designed, and the people are swayed into doing it. You're not going to have a case where they're actually going to appear as a general rule, although that has happened historically, where demons will appear as angels of light. And claim to be, from God, and then say this is what you're supposed to do, and getting the person to start their own religion. We've seen that happen a couple of times, actually. One in more modern history, and one year 600. So
You're saying you're asking to store a demon, and I don't know if he's saying every single thing is demonic, or if he's saying more of these are categories of angels, fallen angels. Could be like, they may not necessarily all be trying to possess you or make you fall, but if they're any kind of angelic entity that has not corrected people's claim of calling it God, it's probably bad news for humans, is what I'm thinking. They probably are at least like gray Jedis, not good Jedis. You know what I'm saying? They may not be Siths, but they're probably like not necessarily your guardian angel either. Is how I'm kind of like looking at it.
Seeing those particular things happen.
What was the one in modern history?
The Mormons. So, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of Mormons out there.
Like if you go based off of personality from like the lore, Loki's way more likely to possess you than Thor. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that Thor is necessarily a good guy who's going to help you out. Anyways,
the the angel that appeared to him, justice, that God will not be mocked. So people are going to you have to pay for your sin, and he extracts it from the demons. They'll tell you that he sets them up very often to have to suffer some punishment so that the particular sin that they committed is avenged.
Can you describe what that looks like? When you just talked about the demon manifesting itself in its true form, what did that look like?
So basically, this was Beelzebub. So her face completely morphed. This woman turned into the facial structure of a man. The jaws literally extend out like this. Now, the eyes go narrow. Because Beelzebub's the demon of impurity, the eyes go bloodshot, which is an indicator that people who suffer from lust don't see reality for what it is, but the eyes went completely bloodshot. The head narrowed. And then her complexion, as I mentioned, turns into that. But then there's a change in color to where it's a color that no human being can replicate. The authors refer to it as cherry wood color, which is this brown-red color that looks like someone who is literally in the middle of a fire burning. So that's what you see, and then of course there is the burnt look around the various facial features. So that there's this darkness or blackness around the particular.
get the charger. Is he back? Yes. Okay.
Your facial features, and then of course the body gets bulkier in size.
When you talk about
Okay, this is too much for him. Gotta scare him. Okay, I guess he went upstairs.
the fingers becoming disjointed, and what's the recovery period look like?
Strangely enough, there's only certain kinds of affliction that the demons, when they manifest, that the person actually has to recover from. Most of the things like that, the person doesn't feel anything. or they don't have to have any recovery.
Thing that you see the most is occult knowledge.
Yeah.
And we chatted a little bit about this before the interview, but we spoke with some of your colleagues, and it sounds like the I don't know how to say it, the church, the hierarchy, somebody doesn't want you doing this.
That's true.
And so when you're talking about occult knowledge, this colleague of yours that told me this, he said that the demons are calling out sins of people very high up in the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want those sins to get out.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they want you gone. Why is that? Is that the occult knowledge that you're speaking of?
It's part of it. So in the ritual, there's what they call chapter 1, which is it's a set of rubrics, how to proceed and what's going to happen in the context of a session. And one of them is that the demons will reveal crimes that have occurred. And so in the cases that I've been in, they have not revealed much about the people in the civil authorities, their crimes so much as they have about the very specific rituals and crimes that people in the hierarchy have committed. And so they've talked about very specific details, given specific details. And it's not just me. Other exorcists are also, they get bits and pieces of this stuff. They don't necessarily have the same full understanding that I have, because the demons have revealed, pretty much the full complexion of what's going on in the church. And it's the fact that the authority structure has been spiritually compromised by some of these people that are in it that are not, they're obviously involved in things that they shouldn't be involved in. And so, but the other exorcists, even the names of the people involved, the demons have said to us, they've actually meant, not just to me, but to other exorcists, they'll actually say, yes, he mentioned this particular person and this particular person, etc. And so we do have a fairly good complexion. By the way, I'm not the first guy that this has happened to. The Father Amouranth, who was the head exorcist in Rome for like 4 years, he complained about this very problem that had been going on since he was just starting being an exorcist. The head exorcist in Rome, one of the head exorcists in Rome, I'm not going to mention him because I don't want people calling him up and say, who are these people, right? But he has also complained about this exact same set of problems, that we have people that are fairly high up. Now, I don't know how much they know me by name specifically. I suspect they know who I am, and they know this. I also know that some of those, I don't know the specific names, but there have been some people that work in the Vatican who, in particular sins that are particularly egregious. You're not going to want someone like me who is out there trying to teach people about the faith and helping them fight the good fight and become more knowledgeable about their faith. You're not going to want that. And that's the problem that we're actually seeing. We also get a sense too of like how these guys get inducted to that type of stuff. It starts to come out, in the sessions. The demons have talked about how these, and it's not stuff that I've ever asked. It's the demons are compelled sometimes by our Lord to talk about this stuff. So this, there's times like this one case that I'm working on right now. When I'm saying Mass, which we start the sessions with, very often what will happen is during the Mass, the demon will manifest. And that tells me that God has told him he's had to tell me something. And so during the session, something will come out, and very often it revolves around this stuff that's happening.
I think people don't need people. You don't need other people to cast out demons. That's true, but part of the reason why some people have demons is because they are fearful. And if a fearful person can't do it alone, that's when a priest is helpful. It gives, even if it's just a placebo effect, at very minimum, it would give the person maybe the courage needed to actually do it. Like for the minor cases. Obviously for the people that like turn different colors, I think it's pretty severe, but
more than one case talk about the stuff that's going on in the church, that it's spiritual, that it's leadership, not all of it, but some of its leadership is very morally compromised, and some of it is involved in stuff that's very dark.
This kind of goes along with what I was talking about earlier. How do you know you're not going to be deceived?
Yeah.
Because if people way up have been deceived, or maybe they haven't been deceived, maybe they just switched teams.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's both. I think sometimes it's both. There is a book that was just recently put out by a woman who ended up getting inducted into being a victim of satanic ritual abuse through deception. I think that some of these guys can also get, but there's, like I said, there comes a certain point where it gets revealed what's going on, and so these guys have to either cut bait or they're going to sign off on it, one of the two. But a lot of these guys went into the priesthood already on the other team, and so they went in specifically to gain the empowerment which comes through being a priest and then be able to use that power against those of us in the church. Wow. And the world, too, for that matter. Because one of the things that most people don't seem to realize, and this is something that you find out when you're an exorcist for 1 or 2 years, this becomes absolutely clear, that the problems that we're seeing generally in the world is actually the result of the collapse of the authority structure, or actually the collapse of the spiritual state of the people of the members of the Catholic Church. Historically, the theologians always said that all grace comes into the world by means of the Catholic Church. It doesn't mean that only Catholics get grace. Obviously, Protestants get grace to believe in Christ and things of that sort, and to lead good moral lives. That's not the issue. The issue is that the Church had always said that the Catholic Church is the mystical body of Christ, and as a result, Christ is through whom all grace flows. And so as a result, it flows through the certain things. I mean, obviously the demons can't do anything that Christ doesn't permit. The second component means that anything that God is going to do in relationship to us as human beings in this life is going to revolve around whether it's going to be good or bad for us spiritually. So he's, generally speaking, the demon's involvement in us, if we respond properly to God's grace, then Christ will use them as instruments of our sanctification and purification. He'll use them to make us more virtuous and things of that sort. So that's kind of the finality or the end goal. It also means, though, that they can't roam or maraud as they please. It does mention in Peter's epistle, it says, going around seeking someone to devour. What that means is that they spend all their time thinking about us and looking at different things and trying to figure that things out. But their ability to actually influence us is completely controlled by Christ. And so demons, as far as the mechanics of it, are actually controlled then by a few things. Christ's will ultimately determines everything. The second thing is their own nature. They can't act outside their own nature, so they're going to be inclined to do specific things that pertain to their own nature. But because they've made their choice, it means that then they're also, the second thing is they're going to be inclined to do things that are opposite of that nature. So very often, so for example, if you take the demon Isis, who was actually originally created for...
Did you just say you're going to binge read the Bible tomorrow? Is that even humanly possible? It's a pretty thick book. Why don't you just aim for like a couple of chapters when you're taking a shit every day?
Or according to the exorcisms that he's that he's been beaten out of, that he was actually created to encourage people to place themselves under the mercy of Christ. Well, because he rejected that task, now he's one of the most cruel and vicious demons to deal with in session. So they're.
When you're scared that you're on a timer, well, spoiler alert, you don't get to heaven by reading the Bible, so it's not going to help you much. You have better use of your time just, doing anything else just about, if you feel like that.
Going to be controlled by their will, what they fixed their will in. Once they made that choice, now they're fixed. And it's not just in evil, it's in, which is generally true, but it's also about specific kinds of evil. So certain demons are going to get involved in certain kinds of things. They also, so there's that. Plus then there's the fact that God also meters what they can and cannot do based upon our good, but that has to do with our own levels of toleration and ability to sustain them. He's never going to test us beyond our abilities. So those particular things is what kind of fixes it and determines it and has some of the mechanics. Demons operate under certain principles. So, for example, the overarching principle that every demon functions by is anything but God. And that basically means that you can believe anything you want. You can do anything you want as long as it doesn't lead you to God, or as long as it's not about God. Because and that's why when they get into positions of power, which you've seen this, when they get into positions of power, such as in the civil authorities, you can talk about anything but God in civil context, right? You can't, if you're on the floor of the Congress, they're not going to be talking about God. At least maybe they have started more recently, but historically you just couldn't do it. So that when they gain access, you're not going to be able to talk about God. So anything but God, and that's why they'll even get people involved in doing all sorts of good things as long as it's detracting them from the relationship with Christ or God. And so that's what they're focused on. They also have another principle: anything but moderation. So one of the exorcists that trained me, he had a particular fondness for Mountain Dew, which I get. I like Mountain Dew. And so he had this particular fondness for Mountain Dew, And the demons knew it. And so at a certain point, there's in this 5 stages of liberation, there's what we call the bargaining phase, which is the second part of the 5th phase. And so the demons start bargaining with him. I say, hey, look it. Let us stay, and I'll make sure you get a truckload of Mountain Dew, right? And so he panics, and then he stops drinking Mountain Dew altogether. Well, that's not where the virtue ultimately lies. The virtue lies in being able to drink something at a moderated level, or eat in a moderated fashion. You know, so they'll do anything but moderation, and the reason for that is because the moderation leads to virtue, because virtue is a mean between extremes. And so they'll very often anything but a very stark similarity to even physical warfare.
When you think of spiritual warfare, it is going on all around us, but we can't see it. A lot of people say it's another realm, but it's right here. Do you believe that?
Yes, it is. It's everywhere.
What does it look like? If we had a veil that we could lift off and see it, what does the world around us look like that we can't see?
Well, I think first of all, it'd be very dark, because you would see a lot of the demonic forces that are just, they just seem to be pretty much everywhere. And if I would say, virtually everything. I mean, you still see pockets where people are trying to lead good lives, trying to be good people. They're willing to seek the truth and that type of thing. But what you would see is the degree of influence they have over different people, who's possessed by them, by what demons and that type of thing. One of there's a dream that St. John Bosco had, because he used to take care of young boys, and during one of the dreams, he saw one of the boys that was acting up during his class and things of that sort. But he sees this boy sleeping, and he sees this demon with his finger inside the kid's head and just stirring it. Right. So you'd see it would be analogous to seeing stuff like that. But I think we would also see, a level of depravity that would be extraordinarily hard for us to process. And that's one of the things that, when I mentioned that the demons have told me about the crimes and that type of thing. A lot of times the person who's possessed will see the thoughts of the demons. The demons, as I mentioned, it kind of breaks down, and so the person actually sees what the demon is actually seeing. And so a lot of times they will see the depravity or the evil or certain things, or they'll actually even see because they can see the thoughts of the demon, they actually get a sense of who he is if he's thinking about himself. They'll come out of that, and it takes a little bit of counseling for them to process how evil it is. Almost traumatic how evil that is.
When we're talking about possession, what are guardian angels doing when a demon enters?
Why are you not sleeping? It's only 10:40 here.
So do they leave?
No,
we're talking about an occult member. Is there?
Yeah. No, they're still there.
They're still there.
They're still there. It's just that how they protect us, the degree they protect us, and the areas of our lives that they protect us is determined also by Christ. So, to give you an example, Padre Pio one time, he used to, from the time he was a kid, he could see his guardian angel. And the way they found out is when he was 10 years old, this one kid this kid got lost in their village. They couldn't find him. And so they asked him about it, and his guardian angel said, well, he's over here. So he said, well, he's over there. So they go in, and there's the kid, right? So that's...
You know what this reminds me of, this part?
Fairy godparents! Admit it! You have fairy godparents! Have a nice day! Fairy godparents! Fairy godparents! Fairy godparents! Fairy godparents! Fairy godparents! Fairy godparents! A fairy godparent! Fairy godparents! Fairy godparents! Fairy godparents! A fairy godparent! Fairy godparents!
He was possessed by demons, and so that's why he freaked out when he saw Timmy, who knew he had guardian angels.
Fairy godparents! Fairy godparents!
That's why he's obsessed. The demons! Clearly the demons.
That's how they found out. Well, during one of the times in which he was suffering dolor, where the demons were attacking him, his guardian angel just kind of like disappeared. And then when he comes back, Padre Pio's a little miffed and chews him out, of course. But
see,
but basically,
same thing.
What the angel communicates to him is that look, if God wants something, we're not permitted, because we have to be perfectly obedient to Him, and we see His holy will in allowing these things. And so they basically, their causation or activity on us, they retract. With demons, the way that we know that they're there is there's something unnatural happening. It's either beyond nature or it's just not normal or what have you. Whereas when the guardian angels are doing
Wait,
their
so
thing,
how do you tell that someone's got demons versus someone's just retarded? How do you know? Don't know.
we function normally because their goal is to guard us so that we can actually function according to the way our nature was designed by God. And then they can also incline certain faculties in our bodies and things like that to function properly. So the way that we know they're active is we have a normal life. Well, these people might have some areas of normal life that the angels are permitted to protect, but other areas God has said, no, you can't protect them there.
Why would he say that?
Because God respects our free will, and so the person making the choice and going in this, God tells the angels.
I must have a lot of
free will.
guardian angels. I feel like my life is pretty normal. When it's not normal, it's pretty
Is there anything
amazing.
else in the realm we would see? Angels, demons?
Yeah, you'd see the angels too. You'd see them both. You'd see a pretty intense battle, I think, much more than you'd say would in times past. You'd see a pretty intense battle.
What does the battle look like?
It would just look like demons actually attached to people and attacking people. You'd actually see the nature of the demons and what the specific demon is that's attacking people. You'd get a sense of that because each one is its own species, its own nature. So if you could see them, you'd actually see, okay, this guy's getting attacked by impurity. This guy's getting attacked by, anger or fear. Or this guy's getting attacked by that. You just actually see how they're actually getting attacked.
I think a lot about spiritual warfare, and the thing that comes to my mind is, I've said this several times on this show, but if you were to have a sphere and it was oil and water, and one never fully really takes over the other.
Right.
I understand where you're coming from, Cal, and I think that's definitely true for a lot of people. But I also think that if he's seen stuff like people turning like cherry wood reddish brown and like screams coming, I feel like that's different than people just being stupid and not wanting to deal with their flaws. But I think there's also what you said is valid too. There's definitely a large segment of people that just blame their shortcomings on demons or whatever. I don't know.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, yeah.
Like a marble.
Right.
And so let's say
I think that's
evil is
it's
the oil and
hallucinations. I
light
don't
is the
know.
water.
Yeah.
Depends
When the
what they're
oil
burning in
takes
their
over the majority of the
exorcism, I
surface
guess.
area of the water, or almost all of it. Is that when we see the second coming? And is it always just changing? Water starts to take over, oil starts to take over, water starts to take over.
Yeah, it ebbs and flows. Yeah. As far as the good and the evil in the world is going to ebb and flow, but before the end, it's going to get particularly bad to the point where it'll be almost, the good will appear almost completely eclipsed. I think that's sometimes what people can actually get a sense of now when they're looking about, I tell people, if this isn't the end times, God have mercy on the people in the end times, because it's just going to be brutal. But if you could see the spiritual complexion of things, you'd actually see it. You'd also see, the fortresses of where the strength is and where the good is coming from in the world and who's on the side of the good.
How much do you think of what we know is a lie?
You mean today?
Mm-hmm.
I think
how much do we think we know is a lie? How much are the elites hiding from us? The people in power, the occult.
Obviously, this is my own personal opinion, but I think we're being lied to almost habitually.
About everything.
About a vast majority of things, and it's all because it's a matter of social engineering and manipulation. I think that they're just it's
Based.
especially when you got certain three-letter agencies that are just chronically doing certain things in order to manipulate the population into a particular, into a particular set of beliefs that they can actually be manipulated. And so, I think one of the advantages of COVID is it's made people stop and think, believe the science, believe the science. Well, I do believe it when it's real science. But the fact that we rely to so much, what happens is now people are standing back and questioning everything, which is, in one sense, giving them the state of our world is actually good. On the other hand, they're questioning stuff. You're just like, why are you questioning that? I mean, that shouldn't be questioned. so people can be a little bit immoderate. But I think that given that what the government's doing, and given what it's, just even what you see on mainstream news media and by corporations, I think we're being manipulated and lied to on a regular basis.
I do too.
Yeah.
I mean, about everything.
I mean, even when things would go better for them if they just came clean and were transparent, they can't. It's like they got to lie to us about it. And I think what it is, it's really a fear of losing control over us.
I mean, there are people that think the world is flat.
Yeah.
That's how deep the lies.
Well, I have a pilot's license, and I've been high enough to know it ain't.
You know what I mean? No,
Yeah.
I mean, how much are they hiding? How much are they hiding?
Yeah.
How much history has been manipulated by institutions?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Well, and I think a large he says, I don't know where it's coming from, because this guy didn't have any of the history that would indicate that he would have the psychological problems that are endemic in relationship to homosexuality, because he was a married man, had, beautiful family, kids, the whole bit. I said, well, now you know it. So we did a severing prayer. From that point on, he never had homosexual ideation. But I found it interesting that the demon of sloth is under the demon of homosexuality, because every homosexual I've ever met, they're soft. So you start to see even in people's personality the complexions of the demons that actually attack them. So those are just some of them. As I mentioned, Abaddon is a demon of destruction.
What about Baphomet?
Yeah, he's a demon of child sacrifice. And so that's why you see him. That's actually why you see the Satanists trying to erect statues of him in various locations. And the statue is, of course, the horned head and all that. But then it's also surrounded by children. And so that's part of it. And usually the reason they're trying to get Baphomet ensconced in a location is because they're trying to get pro-abortion legislation passed or maintained.
What is it with child sacrifice that they want?
Well, there's several parts to it, actually. The first is it's the killing of an innocent, and the demons get empowered by that. But the other part, which is actually something which historically was known in the Catholic Church, which wasn't really talked about too much, was elsewhere, which is actually one of the reasons why in the Catholic Church, if you procure abortion or help someone procure abortion, it's actually an excommunicable offense. And the reason people say, it's because you're killing someone innocent, but that's not true. That's an element of it, but the real reason is because of the fact that, as I mentioned, the overarching principle for demons is anything but God. And so historically, Alexander VII, the Pope, stated that we know of no other means of their salvation. He's talking about children before they have use of reason. We know of no other means of their salvation other than baptism in re. In re is a technical theological term in Latin that indicates they have to be baptized by water. Otherwise, their salvation cannot be assured. And so historically, the church always considered abortion to be such a heinous crime because it permanently robbed a person of the possibility of the beatific vision. This is why the church considered it so evil, that basically the demons are creating a situation, and the reason they're so wed to it is because they just want to keep even the children from ever seeing God. Jeez. That's why they're so wed to it. That's why they will expend enormous amounts of energy protecting it. That's why it's so difficult to get rooted out in the secular sphere. Once it gets in, it's just almost impossible to get out, because the demons will do everything they can to protect it.
How about the angels' hierarchy?
So the hierarchies are, well, technically speaking, they're the same, because the fallen angels come from the hierarchy that God created, that whole hierarchy, which has the 9 choirs.
Maybe that's why they're
and
so
so
worried about the
that
birth rate, because they don't want the child sacrifices to fall. It's not about the future populations being able to sustain themselves at all. It's probably just about, child sacrifice is low.
From none of the Jews are practicing their religion, because none of them are offering sacrifice. That doesn't mean that they're not living up according to certain parts of the Old Testament and things of that sort, but they're not actually performing the ceremonial laws.
Interesting.
And that's why they're so driven to rebuild the temple.
Starting something new isn't just hard, it's terrifying. Before I launch the Sean Riot,
All right, where are we? We're at 3:18. All right, I think I'm going to head off for the night and go to bed early so I can get some stuff done tomorrow. It was interesting so far. I'm enjoying it. people that want to watch it yourself. If you want to finish it, you can. There's a link. Alright. Bye for now. See you probably tomorrow.